Hey there everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of my series Behind the Pencil. Today's episode is going to focus on an original character of mine named Phillip Brambleberry. Phillip was developed physically to look a lot like John Thornton from the miniseries North and South. I've kind of explained that was sort of the trigger, if you will, to get me started on this entire project altogether. I borrowed a lot of concepts like the cotton mill and Phillip's particular motif from that series, and I just kind of ran with it. I figured whatever, I'll enjoy it. But he was referred to in the series mostly as Thornton. Everybody referred to him as his last name, and the reason I was kind of paying attention to that was because Thornton was the name of a character from Harp and Stars, and I was all like, oh my god, so much fangirl. So I just kind of went with it and I enjoyed it. Thornton is relatively new. I don't have a whole lot developed for him. I'm kind of at a crossroads when it comes to him. I'm not quite sure where I want to be. He initially was just going to be a grumpus who Piper sort of comes in with her sunny personality and makes all happy again. But I decided that was just a little bit too, I don't know, vanilla. So I decided to change him up once Jean came into the picture for sure, I decided to change him up. So what I've changed him up to is, he is kind of my main bad guy. Now when I say bad guy, a lot of people are like, well, Terry, you said that he's the lesser of 4 evils. It's true, he is. He doesn't abuse his workers, but he's still not a good guy. So his version of evil is not as apparent as the versions of evil that you would see in the other rat families. His version of evil is very subtle and very backdoor. So that being said, it doesn't mean he's not evil. He really is. He totally is. But yeah, so people kind of read into it what they wanted to, and it's partly my fault because the character's not fully developed yet. So it is what it is. And yeah. So this was my first concept of Phillip. Clearly very much based on Thornton. This was on a page of just sort of overviews for my whole thing. Initially I wanted him with Piper, and I know again I've been called out on this as well. Oh, but Terry, you said that you were going to put Phillip and Piper together. Rah, 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 rah. He can't be gay. Oh yes, he can. The whole concept initially with Phillip was that I was going to pair Phillip and Piper up. That is no longer the case. Phillip and Piper together, it would be a disaster. He would be far too cruel for her. She would just crumble as a person. Initially, like I said, he was not as bad. So now he is bad. He is a baddie, and Piper and him would not make a very good coupling, and I'm not going to do that to Piper. In the original series or plotting that I had, I was just going to make him sort of grumpy with her, sort of like, you know, I don't need you causing trouble in my mill. Rah, 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 rah. But that ended up changing greatly. Between here and here, this was my last drawing of Phillip, and then I jumped right into this doodle of him. What ended up happening is I got really focused on Jean and Piper, like really focused on Jean and Piper, to the point where everybody else was getting neglected, including Phillip. So all of my development for him has been relatively recent, and I'm not gonna say I'm struggling with it. It's just he's the kind of character who didn't fall into my lap. Like Terri, she fell into my lap. Piper fell into my lap. Adam fell into my lap. The kind of character that Phillip is, did I say Adam? I did say Adam. The kind of character that Phillip is actually quite difficult for me to conceptualize and bring to life, because while he does have all of these evil, mean tendencies, he presents himself in a very professional and very subtle and very calm manner. So writing that is difficult, and drawing it is even worse, because everything I draw tends to be highly, highly, highly expressive. And Phillip is just not that. He's actually kind of a big blah. A picture of Phillip and Piper, because at some point he does use her. Phillip and Seamus. Seamus is such a drunk, but like Phillip has no tolerance for him, but he deals with it. When it comes to dealing with people, mice, rats, whatever, Phillip is very, you know, calm, very collected. But on the inside, he's usually raging. He's not as I've said a few times, he's not a friendly guy. He's friendly when he needs to be to get what he wants. But overall, he is a loner. He prefers to be alone, which is why he employs Jean. Jean does a lot of the running for him. Jean is his go-between. Jean is the guy who is the messenger and also deals the punishment and usually takes the punishment. And then Phillip just kind of sits back and reaps the rewards of it. That being said, that puts Jean in a very high position of power, and Phillip's aware of that. It's just he trusts Jean enough that it doesn't really matter to him. Phillip and Terri. Theirs is a very volatile relationship, mostly because they're very similar, but whereas Phillip hides his cruel intentions, Terri is like right out there in front of it. And part of him is jealous of that she has that kind of freedom, that she can play those games. And she does get punished quite a bit from him for that. He has to maintain a certain level of sophistication and do battery in order to keep people in line, because he controls basically everything in the town. His is the business that leads to the trade good business, the banking business, and even the prostitution business, because the prostitutes got to have clothes too. And since he's the only cotton mill in the town and in the Providence or the area, they kind of got to work with him. He's bridged a lot of gaps, whereas his father initially, I have it set up, always tried to teach him, keep the mill separate, don't get involved with the bankers or the trade goods, you know, put your stuff up for sale instead of trying to put all these trading embargoes and things like that in place. Phillip ignored all of that. Once his father passed away, he took over the business at a very young age, I might add, and he basically did exactly what he wanted to do, and that was reach in and get his hands into a little bit of everybody's business in order to promote his own. So really, his is the business that pays for all the other businesses, if that makes any sense to you guys. If the cotton mill goes, there's no trade goods, there's no bank, and then there's no prostitution home. And I realize it's kind of like, because where I'm from is called GM Town. I'm from Flint, Michigan. So what I'm liking this little city to is my own city. And when the shop pulled out and the workers lost their jobs, everything fell apart. That's how powerful one industry can be to a city. Phillip is at the head of that powerful industry. So of course everyone's going to do everything in their power to stay on his good side, including the mice who want to work for him because the fairer wages, he does pay them a wage. He does feed them, unlike certain others. And he is relatively not that demanding. He demands a full day's work from his workers, nothing more. You do your work, you get food, you get paid, you get a place to sleep. No argument. You don't do your work, you either don't get paid or you don't get fed, both of which you kind of need. But he won't kick them out unless it's a repetitive thing. If it's a repetitive thing, then he will trade his people to the prostitution home if they're female, or to the trade goods if they are male, because in the trade good industry, male mice are used to go out and scurry and scavenge for food and things like that in order to bring back. So it's actually a really dangerous job. But Terri is used quite a bit by Phillip because Terri, again, has no shame. She does what he asks, and what he asks is for her to charm, seduce, and be alluring towards his other rat males, like at parties and things like that. So if he has a party, he wants to bring a couple girls with him in order to entertain the men. Terri is one of them. She's good at what she does. He knows that she will do exactly what he says. It just means that she has to put up with some of his crap. That changes when he tries to bring in Piper. And then of course there's Agatha. Again, that's not 100%. I don't have permission from Kay yet. It's not 100% yet. And if it ends up not being 100%, that's fine. I'll come up with something. But he does have another girl, either Agatha or another girl that I'll have to create, who he uses in order to do this. There's also the triplets, who I have not yet really conceptualized, but he uses them as well because they are triplets. They are identical sisters. And they, of course, do as he says. Most everybody does what Philip says. The only one who doesn't do what Philip says is pretty much Piper, and that's not because she's taking a stand against him. It's because she just doesn't know better. Philip and Jean, as I said, have a very close relationship. Philip really trusts Jean with a lot of things. A lot of things. Jean has open access to him 24/7. Haha, open access. He can go wherever Philip is, and he won't, you know, Philip can employ bodyguards and everything like that, but he doesn't need to because Jean kind of is his bodyguard. So basically, wherever Philip is, Jean usually is. But Jean also has a lot of freedom in that he's not micromanaged. If he needs to go do rounds to check on how people are doing, he's allowed to go do his rounds. The only thing that Philip ever asks of him is to check in with him and to be his pretty little soldier, because just as he has women to entertain the male rats, he needs males to entertain the female rats. Jean comes in for that purpose, but for the most part, within the society, female rats aren't that interested in messing around with the help, whereas the males are. It's a very sexist society. It's just the females hold themselves to a different standard. But that being said, it is what it is. A few people have asked and inquired, and I'll go ahead and answer it. Has Philip ever been in love? Well, I have explored that on multiple levels. Philip, in the end, is going to be gay. Why? I don't know. It just suits him. There's no rhyme or reason. I don't think that there needs to be a definition as to why he is gay or why he is not. It just fits the character, so that's exactly why it's going to be that way. Philip is not the kind of person to fall in love. He doesn't like to form close attachments to people or even necessarily things, although his business is his heart and soul. And I think that that's why he's never able to fully express himself to people. That, and he lives a life in a facade. He basically walks around appearing to be calm, collected, and in control, when on the inside he is just as unstable, anxious, and angry as anybody else. He just doesn't get to express it the way everyone else does. But back to my point, when you live a life where you have to appear to be one thing but you're actually another, you can't form stable relationships or bonds with people. The only one who has ever seen Philip for what he is Jean, and that's because Jean has been there for a very long time. I imagine that Jean was probably with Philip. I haven't 110% written it out, but I believe that I'm going to have it to where Jean and Philip are about the same age. They basically grew up together, but Jean was slave labor and Philip was higher than that. So they knew of each other, but they didn't actually get to know each other until after his father passed away. Some quick sketches here of Le Philip. Little messy sketch. I always imagine that that's like post makeout. Don't mind me, that's how I roll. But or post fight, but he doesn't fight very much, so probably post makeout. Anyway, whatever. I have a little doodle here. He does wear glasses. He does it for, because their society is all candlelight when they have light, and or fireflies and little lanterns, because oh my god, I love that imagery. But it's still low light at night, so he wears glasses to help himself out. And then this right here is basically how Philip is. He will get his work done, and then he just kicks back and sort of dictates from like a king. In this particular one, I had written, funny, I don't recall telling you to retrieve her Brownfoot. Brownfoot is Jean's last name. So the whole thing that I've got in here is that Philip doesn't really like Piper for several reasons. But later on in the series, it is a jealousy because Jean does start paying attention to her. Now, Jean does not neglect his duties. Jean is not that kind of guy. Jean is the kind who goes and he does his work like he's supposed to. But the fact of the matter is Jean does take a lot of liberties when it comes to dealing with Piper. At some point, she does get kidnapped and he does go after her. He does not get permission to do so. It's not that he thinks he doesn't need it, it's that he is assuming or taking it upon the assumption that Philip would want Piper back. But at this point there's a bit of animosity between, well, from Philip, not necessarily from Piper, but there's a bit of animosity from Philip towards Piper, so he really didn't want him back. This is earlier on in the series. This is one of the first encounters that Piper will be having besides meeting Philip. Is basically he's going to use her, because that's what he does. That's the whole point of having this slave labor force, is to be able to use them for your purposes. Piper is young, she's cute, she's well-mannered, well-spoken, she knows how to act like a lady, and it's not forced, it's genuine. So that gets her all sorts of like attention from him. She's very much like Agatha, who's right here, but at the same time very much not, in that Agatha is very mature, very developed, and very practiced, whereas Piper still has that innocence about her, and that's what Philip sees as, man, we have this untapped innocence right here that we could totally be using to open up conversations and blah 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 blah. So he wants her pulled in. Philip being Philip, he wants head-to-toe inspections of all his ladies. He wants clean ladies. He wants nice ladies. He doesn't want somebody who's scarred up, which is why Allison isn't even an option. But he does respect Allison. Let's not get that wrong. That actually is a relationship I haven't really talked about, Philip and Allison. Allison is the mouse that you guys saw on the first page who has the scars on her. She was actually in a fire that, as a child, that took... Because a lot of these are younger relations. Like Philip, Allison, and Jean all know each other. They grew up together. And that's why they're all sort of in higher roles than, say, Piper. But point being, back to this, is he wouldn't choose Allison because she is scarred up. But Piper is not. So he's like, oh yeah, here we go. But again, he is not attracted to girls. So when he says do a full inspection and Piper thinks, oh my god, he's a pervert. That's not really it, is he wants someone else to do it. He just wants to make sure that she's clean. So yeah. Yes, yes, yes. And he does demand that his girls call him master, which I think is funny. The men, he doesn't force it, but most of them do. And then this is a bit of how Philip is for realsies. He does have a temper, is a very explosive temper, and it is a very long-lasting temper. He doesn't have one of those tempers that he gets mad, gets it out, and then is done. He stays mad for a very long time. So in the few instances where people have gotten on his nerves, he has either basically ruined their lives or ruined their businesses, or a little bit of both. He's in a position where he can do both. But he really, really checks his anger. Jean helps him with that quite a bit, because Jean is just kind of like a wet towel or a wet blanket sometimes. So whereas Philip wants to get worked up, Jean doesn't, and as a result, Philip doesn't. It's kind of like, I want to get all mad, I want to get me, you got my back, bro? And bro is like, no dude, totally don't have your back. It's not worth getting mad about. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. But there are instances where he does get mad. At Piper is one of those. I just haven't figured out the exact situation where that happens. There's a few it could happen. I'm not going to say it. I know exactly what it's going to be though, I think. And it's so sad, but it's so great. But yes, he gets very, very angry at her, and he basically just wants to hand her over to the prostitution house or hand her off to the tradespeople. He doesn't care where she goes as long as she's gone. And then here's Cherry booping her. Booping that nose. Cherry does that. I don't know if you guys know that, but Cherry is a nose booper. If you're mad or angry or something and you're getting so frustrated with her, she's going to do the most annoying thing she can. She's going to put her finger on that nose and she's going to go boop and just tick you right off. And that's his reaction. He's telling Jean to kill her. Okay, and that's it for free sketches. Like I said, he's not that developed, so I don't have as many sketches of him as I do of Piper, but I do have some concept sketches. These were very early on concept sketches. Like I said, since he's based off of Thornton from North and South, it was really easy for me to actually put his character together on paper. I just need to sort of develop his character itself. And yeah, so there's just a few doodles in here for that. And that's basically it. Philip is, in a nutshell, he is my baddie. But he's not going to be so evil that like there aren't likable qualities to him. There are actually quite a few likable qualities to him. He's very dedicated to his job, and part of him being dedicated to his job is a drive to keep his workforce safe and to keep it prosperous. So that being said, all in all, he's a bad guy, but like it's kind of like bad guys from Wall Street versus bad guys who are out there, you know, beating down little old ladies to steal their groceries and stuff like that. He is a businessman, evil kind of guy. That's not to say he doesn't order his fair share of beatdowns. He does. He does. And he does order his fair share of murders. But overall, those are few and far between. It's not what he likes to do, whereas like in the other Rat families, they're like off with their heads like every hour. And then like Philip's just like, we'll kill him like 3 years from now. But anyway, yep. I'm not sure if that answers anyone's questions or all of them. Again, he is a very underdeveloped character. I'm still working on a lot of things for him. Again, a lot of my development comes from role-playing stuff. I have not had an opportunity to even try role-playing Philip. I'm always looking for people who may or may not be interested in that. Just keep in mind that it's all based on my availability since I work a ton. But anyway, so yes, that is Philip Brambleberry. Expect to see more of him in the future. I'm starting to focus in more on this project like I should be. My intention is to get an actual, because someone finally asked, I do intend to do a comic based on this. It will be updated sporadically as I feel it necessary or as I complete things. But that's a little ways off in the future to go still. I need to get the story going so that way I know what direction to go into, because you will just dead end if you start a comic without a full thought out plot of some kind. But yes, so that is Philip Brambleberry in a very condensed but 22-minute nutshell. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, there's not too much to him yet because he's still a work in progress, but as I change things, and again, his character could completely change again, but as I change things, you guys will be able to keep up a little bit better through my sketchbook reviews and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are enjoying the series, and I will see you in the next episode of Behind the Pencil.